Good morning, Charles. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you? Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems like it's been a while. I guess it has,
It
right? A
has.
couple
It's been
couple of weeks,
two
and
weeks. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So what was your family vacation like? Why don't you tell us about it?
Better than expected, to be honest with you. There was no fighting, which is with a lot of people with some different political backgrounds that can be an issue, but
Yes.
and there could be some some things that get triggered, but none of that happened. It was nice. We had some great food. I hadn't been to Ocean City in probably 20 years, didn't realize how nice the beach was. And I was telling you before, with the sand that is actually under the water is just as clean as the sand that's on the beach. So yeah, but you go a quarter mile out, you walk, and it's pristine sand. You're not stepping on rocks, jellyfish,
Giant squid, great
or
whites,
needles. None of that.
No
None
syringes.
Of that. Yeah, no syringes.
Wow.
Yeah, and and the water was, it was refreshing. It wasn't ice cold. And yeah, the food was fantastic.
What was the best thing you ate while you were up there?
Probably we found a little Italian place, was not actually on the beach or the boardwalk. It's called Ripieno's,
Okay.
and they make 28-inch pizzas. And they have a brick oven. I mean,
I guess I could step down for once.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, well, so we got a 16-inch, but they had a brick oven pizza where it was, I mean, it was that would fit these 28-inch. And I got a picture online of me in the front of this pallet of boxes for these 28-inch pizzas.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it was the picture didn't do proper justice in terms of the proportions. It was a monster. But the food, the pizza was fantastic. We got Philly cheesesteaks from there as well. Everything we ate. And it's interesting that they didn't have the name on the pizza box. It was just these generic boxes. And
Okay.
I feel like in my past, the places that don't put their names on the pizza boxes tend to have the best food. I don't know. I don't know if they're just putting all the profits into either the chefs or the ingredients or what it is, but it was just these generic pizza and yeah, it was just a plain pepperoni pizza, but it was some of the best I've ever had. That was nice. Fantastic. But they also had these crepe places. They're making savory crepes, they're making sweet crepes right on the boardwalk. Absolutely delicious. They fried everything under the sun: ice cream, Snickers bars, Twinkies.
Yeah.
I tasted quite a bit. They had this place. It was called Dodo Cookie Dough Ice Cream. So it was basically 5 or 6 different flavors of cookie dough, 5 or 6 different flavors. I'm actually probably more, maybe 8, in different flavors of ice cream, and you get an entire scoop of cookie dough and an entire scoop of ice cream. They put it together, and now you're actually eating, the unbaked cookie dough with ice cream. It's not just like these little chunks.
Oh, you're blowing my mind, man.
Yeah. They were, it was.
Did they have peanut butter cookie dough?
They did. Now,
did they have peanut butter flavored ice cream?
They did not, but they
that would be my combo right
there. Salted banana caramel, so you could do a little Elvis action.
I could do
right?
that, yeah,
right.
That,
which is the one I did. This is one I did.
I probably would have done that too.
Yeah, and in theory it was great. The problem was the execution. So what they did was you had a bowl, and they put the scoop of ice cream on the bottom, and then they put the big scoop of cookie dough on top. You couldn't easily get to both. And in my mind, I need a little taste of this, a little taste of that. I need a taste of both at the same time. And you really had to kind of get creative in order to get to the ice cream through that huge thing of cookie dough on top, right?
Interesting. Yeah, see, that's what I love so much. Remember when Ben and Jerry's had the peanut butter cookie core, where it was the peanut butter cookie, I guess, dough or whatever in the middle, and then the ice cream was around it. That was perfect.
Yes, and that's what they needed to do. Maybe put a little side by side action here,
or an injector, a big injector. That's the $1 million idea. Yeah, screw this podcast. We're going into the cookie dough ice cream business.
It is a local franchise over there, so we could see about a franchise opportunity. So the other issue was that the cookie dough had so much sugar in it, it took away from the peanut flavor.
Okay.
And I think, and then, my girlfriend also got the cookie dough, just chocolate chip cookie dough. And it was the same thing. It wasn't like the the Toll House cookie dough that you get from from the supermarket, where it definitely tastes like cookie dough. And it's not quite as much sugar in it, and the sugar just took away from some of the flavor. So I would definitely, we'd want to mess with some of the recipes if we do this.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
Just a heads up. But
yeah,
but it's worth a try. It was worth a try. A lot of all you can eat crab houses there. And what I discovered was I'm not a fan of the crab house where it's basically nothing. They serve nothing but crabs. I had better crab cakes and crab based food at every place had some sort of crab dish,
right?
And those were actually better. The places that serve other types of food rather than these big crab houses. So
now
just a heads up.
So this was Maryland, right?
Nice, correct.
So is this like they give you a bunch of crabs and they give you a bunch of newspaper and a hammer and you got to bust them apart yourself?
That's one of the ways one of the things they do. There's another one where you got some Alaskan king crab and you have to crack it open.
Yeah.
And you got the paper towels. So we went to this place and we're like, and some of the claws are huge and it's very easy to crack that open with like a nut cracker, like an almond, a walnut kind of cracker.
Yeah.
You crack that and you get a nice chunk of meat out. But then there's the smaller parts of the claws, and it's not that easy to crack open. You're really kind of working with your fingers. So they have these these seafood forks, right? These tiny little forks that pull out, or I don't remember what they're called, but I mean, they're pretty common. So we ask for them and the waiter goes, no. I mean, this is probably a house. It's got this crab place. It's, the size of a block and there's 2 floors of it.
Right.
And there's people coming in and out. I mean, this place has been there for probably 50, 60 years. And we're like, hey, can we have crab for, these little seafood forks? He's like, oh yeah, we don't have those. People ask for them all the time, but we don't have them. And I mean, and these entrees, they were not cheap. I mean, it was a minimum of $40 for crab. It was crazy. So yeah,
that is the customer service response that blows my mind the most out of all of them is people ask for that all the time, but we just don't have it.
And the thing is that and this place was packed. So clearly, and it's near the beach.
Yeah. What they're doing is working for them. So,
right. I mean, why? Yeah. So, but overall, it was a great experience. I would definitely, I can't wait to go back. The water was great. The beach was great. The food was fantastic. I ate a little too much. I need to trim up here a little bit for our photo shoot for the podcast.
So that's a good point. Let's talk about that for a second. We don't need to get into a long discussion of it, but
sure.
You're a man who likes to work out and have some control over his body and his aesthetic. So you got a photo shoot about a week away.
Yeah.
What does trimming up in a week look like for you? Eating a lot of eggs and drinking a lot of water, nothing else.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. It's very low carb, 0 carb.
Okay, 0 carb.
And lots of water and probably a little bit more lighter workouts so that you're not triggering hunger hormones.
Okay.
But it's mostly going to be diet based rather than exercise based. I mean, it's good to keep the movement going or whatever, but really the key is what you're putting in your mouth. and good sleep. Sleep too is huge for getting those hormones properly set and allows you to heal, lose weight, release that stress. Because if you're holding on to stress, if you're feeling stressed, that cortisol is going to be spiked and it's going to be very difficult to let go of weight because your body's going to be in protective mode. So it's not going to say, hey, I don't need this extra energy, which is stored as fat, right? It's going to hold on to it.
Okay. So sleeping, little to no carbs. How about the protein and fat intake? Is it mostly protein? You're going to take the fat down a little bit and mostly focus on the protein, or keep about the same level that anybody doing a low carb diet would do?
I think the better move is to be able to cut out the fat. Actually, to be honest with you, it's not a long-term. So if it's a crash diet, it's basically all protein and water and very little fat and 0 carbs. But that's not that is a,
No, we're only talking about the week before you're getting your picture taken.
Yeah. That is not a long-term strategy.
6 days before picture day.
That's not a long-term strategy.
Okay,
But
so
that would be probably
what are your? I mentioned,
and I mean,
eggs.
if you can do some intermittent fasting, if you can go a couple of days without eating and just drink water,
days, huh?
I mean, that's, again, it might not be, if you've never done fasting, if you're not in ketosis, that's going to be very difficult to do, but it can be done.
So we mentioned eggs already. I've been trying to figure out some good sources of clean and cheap and easy protein. So the other day I was at Publix and they had the canned chicken breast in water on a BOGO. So I got a few cans of that. And I'm trying I started Googling some recipes for like, okay, what are some decent tasting things I can make for myself using canned chicken other than just, mixing it with a little bit of avocado mayonnaise and having a very, fairly bland chicken salad. Like what else can I do? And I bookmarked it, but I haven't gone back to it yet. So hard-boiled eggs and canned chicken are a couple of my go-tos when I want cheap and easy protein. What do you like?
So I like ground meat, so ground turkey. So I think Publix has like 3 pounds of either Jennie-O or Butterball ground turkey. That's comes out to like $3 or $4 a pound, which is decent.
Yeah.
Cook that up in advance. And in that I know you're a little bit limited on space. I freeze. I freeze it, so I'm not cooking it all the time. But it cooks up quick too, even if you're doing it on the spot. And then even cold cuts. So you can get at Publix, they used to have Boar's Head Simplicity, which had no preservatives or anything else, and that they don't carry that in any of these any Publix anymore. But at Whole Foods, they've got Applegate Farms, they've got turkey and ham and even some cheese that have no preservatives in them and are fairly healthy for you, and they're not crazy expensive. And so for me, I really like cold cuts because you don't have to cook them, you keep them in the fridge, and just you can really kind of moderate and just eat enough until you aren't hungry anymore. So you can just take a couple of slices, eat it, wait a few minutes, and see if you're still hungry. If you're still hungry, have another slice or two, maybe have a piece of cheese, and then some water with it. And then again, see if you're hungry. If you're not, you're good. Really listen to your body in terms of your hunger, and not eat just because it's noon or
right. Yeah.
A breakfast.
I love when I'm doing low carb, man. I love cold cuts, but I do worry about these are so processed. There's so much salt and preservatives in them. But I didn't know that there used to be a Boar's Head line for that, and that Whole Foods has something. So that's something I'm going to look out for.
It was like $13 a pound. It wasn't outrageous.
Yeah, it's not crazy, especially depending on what meat it is. I know that some places I've gone to get whatever they're. A lot of the fancier deli counters will have like 2 versions of prosciutto. They'll have one version of prosciutto, and then they'll have the fancy prosciutto. Yeah, and I think I've spent $26 a pound on prosciutto before.
Wow!
But the place that I got that, it was very little fat. It was mostly the ham with only a little bit of fat along the border. So that tasted quite a bit better. I did want to mention to you, yesterday I was in the Lakeland area. I had to go to a friend's funeral, and a friend, his wife passed away, and I was friends with her, but I was closer to him, and they're from the Polk County area. So I went over to Lakeland, and I got there a little early. I was driving around looking for a place to eat, and I saw a Publix Greenwise Market. So Greenwise, their line of organic, they have. Publix is based in the Lakeland, Winter Haven area. So they're trying out a concept that's basically their Whole Foods fresh market competitor, where it's all Greenwise food at this Publix.
I like it. I would go.
I wanted to check it out. I didn't get to go in to see what it was like, but I just on paper, I love the idea that they have a market that is just all of their natural and whole foods. So that's something I'm going to check out next time I'm that way.
Yeah. Keep in mind when you're looking at the Greenwise stuff, not all of it is organic. Some it just might be natural, right? That's minimally processed, might not have any preservatives in there. Most of it is, but some of it I notice it's Greenwise, but it's not actually organic, like officially certified organic, right?
Okay, good to know.
But it's still going to be better than the other choice.
Another tip that I have to share with you and our listener out there who if they've run into the same problem, all of the higher end eggs that I like
Mhm.
I guess there's a thing where it's like, okay, if we're going to let our chickens out of cages, or we're going to let them roam around the pasture, we're going to just feed them organic food, then the container that we sell the eggs in also has to be paper based. They don't want to throw these fancy organic eggs in just cheap styrofoam containers. And so the cardboard paper based ones, for me, if I don't go through the 3 dozen eggs I bought fast enough, they start falling apart, the cardboard things. Because, well, part of it's because I don't have a frost-free refrigerator, and so there's more moisture in there, and so it makes them fall apart. So what I did was I got 2 18 count egg trays on Amazon that are made out of plastic and that have covers that click closed, and they're also very stackable. So now I can buy my 3 dozen eggs at a time and keep them in these plastic reusable containers. And I don't have to worry about, because literally one time I took out the dozen eggs in the cardboard thing and it just fell apart. And I only lost 1 egg when I dropped it. But I was so frustrated that one of my eggs cracked because my cardboard container fell apart.
Wow, that hasn't happened to me.
Again, I don't have a frost-free refrigerator in my camper.
Yeah,
so I think there's a higher humidity in my refrigerator than there is in a normal household refrigerator.
Wow.
And so, but still, I like it better anyway. And this way, I even when I was done getting them at Whole Foods, I transferred them to the plastic containers right there in my car, because then I could worry less about driving them home.
Sure, a little bit more security for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was, and then the other thing I've done is I switched to keeping my milk in glass bottles instead of in the paper cartons.
Okay.
Because glass conducts heat and cold better than cardboard does. And so, I buy this fancy organic milk that is, the last one I bought a week ago is supposed to be good till October before it expires. Wow. I bought the Fairlife stuff with the boosted levels of protein and lower lactose. And and so apparently if you keep your milk in glass instead of in cardboard, then it stays good even longer than it would if you were just in the container that it came in.
Have you tried the goat milk yet?
No, I have not done that yet.
I had some the other day. It was good. I liked it, and it didn't. It wasn't.
Does it have a little bit of a sharp flavor to it? Because I know
not at all.
Goat milk cheese does, which is what I like about goat milk cheese.
Right,
but the milk doesn't.
No, it does not. It's creamier, I think, than regular milk, and I didn't taste any kind of sharpness or strangeness to it at all. Maybe mentally it might add a little something knowing that it's a goat milk, but also it's got more vitamins in it as well. So
any idea what the fat content is?
I don't remember. It was full fat. The only one that I saw was a full fat goat milk.
Whole milk is like whole milk from cows is I think 4%, right?
I think so. Yeah. Something like that.
I wonder what percentage.
Oh, but there's less lactose in it as well.
Okay. Gotcha. So if you're lactose intolerant, it might work out.
There's still, I don't think, if you're lactose intolerant, there's still enough in there where it's going to be a problem. But
I was.
It's not like a Lactaid.
One of the happiest discoveries from my 23andMe that I got last year was that I do have the gene to break down cow's milk. So I'm happy about that. So
yeah, not everybody has that.
Even though I do have a little bit of reaction when I eat too much dairy. I don't know if it's just, overall systemic inflammation or whatever. It's definitely not lactose intolerant. I don't have stomach problems from drinking milk. I just have a little bit of a histamine response from it.
Okay. Yeah.
But it doesn't slow me down. Yeah. It does not slow me down at all.
So you were, before we got on this podcast, we were actually talking about a book you were listening to with some interesting ideas around toxic masculinity. And that's when I kind of stopped us and I was like, okay, look, we got to get this on the podcast because I think it's important.
Yeah, this is I'm really enjoying this book. It's called For the Love of Men. And the subtitle is From Toxic to a More Mindful Masculinity.
Oh my God.
It's crazy that I didn't know this book. I swear I did not know this book existed before we came up with the name of the podcast. But
and you sure you didn't write it?
Yeah, I definitely didn't write it because I know I didn't write it because I don't know that I agree with everything the author says, but like we talked about when we did 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, it's part of if you're going to expose yourself to new information and you're going to read new books, don't look for the books that are only full of things you agree with 100%. Look for the books that you can resonate with some of it, but some of it challenges your current perceptions. And I'm definitely finding that in this book. One of the other books I read recently that I really enjoy is Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, which is all about female sexuality.
Okay.
And how science and society has basically gotten it wrong for a long time because of confirmation bias and things like that. And, the study of everything has been dominated by men for the last 400 or 500 years because all the men were scientists. So naturally they're going to bring their biological and sort of cultural perspective into the science that they investigate. Now, obviously good science is free of that, but science is not free of humans. So, there's going to be things that we get wrong because of what we're bringing into our application of science. And so I feel like the area of sexuality and gender studies is that it's tough because we bring who we are into those conversations, and it's hard to not do that. And so the only cure for that is more and more science, more and more studies, and more thinking on these difficult topics. But yeah, so I'm really enjoying this book. I'm doing it on Audible as I often do. And let me see this. The description on Amazon is very short. I'll just read it. So it says, a nonfiction investigation into masculinity for the love of men provides actionable steps for how to be a man in the modern world while also exploring how being a man in the world has evolved. And
what was interesting to me was what got my attention was your story about the reason why so many men on dating sites are taking pictures with dead animals. And that's one of the biggest criticisms I've heard from a lot of women is what
right.
Another dead fish, a dead deer, like why, these, and then just like next. And I was actually, it's interesting because I don't know if you've watched Love on the Spectrum, but it's basically, it's great. It's a dating show. It came from, I think, either Australia or the UK. I think Australia. Basically, it follows different people who are on the autism spectrum, and one of the biggest problems that they have is finding a love connection, and
sure.
Basically because their difficulty sometimes communicating.
Right.
And I talked to my dad, who's a therapist, and he says he's got a few patients who are on the spectrum, and he said that is, from his experience, the biggest thing that they complain about is not finding, a romantic love interest. And so this one of the people that they follow, they set up different dates. Sometimes they set some of these people up on dates, and sometimes they just kind of follow them as they go through, the normal dating apps, that are so common. And one of the girls on there basically was commenting, is just like dead animal, just next, and like flipping through. She's like, this is crazy how many men have those pictures on there. And that's not the only person I've heard complain about that. When I was on the dating apps, I did not have any dead animals, but I didn't have any live animals either. I didn't have any, because I don't have any pets.
I had plenty of live animals.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it was Liz Plank. It may have been one of her colleagues that addressed this, and I found it very interesting because my assumption, being an armchair amateur sociologist, evolutionary psychologist that I am, I don't claim authority in those areas, but I'm very interested by them. So I just assumed that, okay, there's something deep seated within men where they think if I show a picture with a dead animal, then that's going to show women that, I could provide food, or, I'm strong enough to be out in the wilderness, and I can take care of, meeting my and my family's needs, whatever. But this other idea that I got from again, I don't know if I read it in the book or if I saw it on an Instagram post or whatever, but it was, what if the reason that men pose with dead fish and dead deer is because as men, we are too ashamed to ask our buddies to take our picture. We're too self-conscious. We think that it's, indulgent or even, gay to ask our friends to take our picture. And so the only way we feel comfortable asking our buddies to take our picture is if we're holding up something we just killed.
Yeah, or some sort. Yeah, and I think along those, I totally can see that. I never thought of it that way, and
Yeah.
it makes total sense. Same thing. Guys aren't. I mean, growing up, I didn't like pictures of myself. I didn't like the way I looked, and it was just not something that, was really ever, introduced, or in terms of taking pictures of yourself. And so, unless. I mean, and the pictures I'm looking at, my sister put together a nice little collage for my 40th birthday, and I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
And most of them are some sort of like celebration or accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
I even have one of finding, I don't know if you remember, back in the day, it was very difficult to get a copy of Nintendo's Adventures of Link or whatever, and I found it in Germany when I went over that, and I have a picture of me in this horrible jeans jacket from 1988 holding this cartridge, this golden cartridge that I had found over in Germany, because it was very difficult to get here.
Was that it was a sequel to Legend of Zelda, right?
Yes, it was.
Yes,
yeah,
I remember that now. Yeah.
Yep. And the other pictures of me are like me second place on a in swimming, as a little kid. That's or graduating college, with my sister. I mean, these are not just everyday type of, just take a picture. There's something that's being celebrated. So I could see,
right.
If you want a recent picture and you haven't done anything, it's, graduate school or whatever from all the time.
Right.
Yeah. You need, so I could kind of see that, they're holding
and for so many dudes, I mean, I've not myself used a dating app to look at men's pictures, but I have looked at men's pictures from, friends that were girls that were looking at them. And it is often just selfies or group pictures, or I killed a fish or I killed a deer. And that's like it. And it's because, a lot of guys do seem to be uncomfortable saying to their buddy, hey, I like the way I look tonight. I'd like you to take a picture of me.
Yeah. Right.
That is normal. Thankfully, that is not one of my problems. I have no issues saying that to you.
You're the exact opposite.
Exactly.
Like, why aren't you taking more pictures of me?
Yeah. Have you seen how I look tonight? Why aren't you taking a picture of me?
What's wrong? Are you blind?
But
have you not seen the way I look?
That's not my issue, but it does make sense that that could be a source of concern or shame or whatever. And it's interesting to look at it from that perspective. And I'm learning a lot of stuff from this book, where it's just, gosh, so much of what we do on a regular basis as men is tied into the idea of avoiding shame for not living up to some completely arbitrary standard of masculinity that has been set up for us by our culture. It's like we have so many modern versions of, you have to behave in a way that makes it seem like, if the other tribe invades the village, you'll be able to defend yourself and your family. It's like, okay, well, that's probably not going to happen. I mean, it could, but it feels pretty unlikely in the modern West that you have to be ready for that. But we have so many of these rituals and these standards that we set that says, okay, you better live up to them, or else we're going to make you feel like you're not good enough.
Yeah, when you say you better, to me, that's, that translates into should,
right. Exactly.
And that's one of the things I heard, a couple years ago is, try to remove all those shoulds out of your life, because those are just ideas and opinions of other people, for you. And again, when it was important for us to maintain our status in the tribe and in order to survive, you needed to listen to some of those shoulds from other people. But these days it's not as important.
Yeah, look, we've all heard the story about. It's been a joke in multiple comedies. The idea of, if you go to prison, you got to start a fight with the toughest guy and you got to beat him so that they know not to mess with you. It's like, okay, maybe that applies still today in maximum security prisons.
Yeah,
but it doesn't apply at the company barbecue, but there's still so many guys acting like that because they think that's how it has to be.
Right. Yeah.
And I think
that's the safe way to be, right? People are acting that way because that's been the culture for so many years. And if you are then showing that your value is lined up with those, archaic ideas, that's a safe way to show your value. And you don't necessarily need to make yourself vulnerable or make yourself uncomfortable in other ways.
But I think that we're getting to a point where a lot of people, not enough, but a lot of people can recognize, okay, the strongest way to, demonstrate, the most effective way to demonstrate strength for not just men, but for humans in general, is to say, look, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to live authentically, and I'm going to do the right thing for the right reason at the right time. And whether I get somebody else's praise or criticism, it matters to me, but that's not going to be the primary driver for how I choose to act or behave. How I choose to act or behave is doing the right thing and the healthy thing for myself and my family and the world. And if somebody doesn't like it, then I'm strong enough to accept that some people aren't going to like it, and I'm going to do the thing that I think is the right thing to do anyway.
Yeah,
and that's the way you demonstrate strength, whether you're a man or a woman or whatever.
Dr. Julie talked about that in the previous section too, is really look at who is offering that praise or criticism in terms of, using that as one of the many filters you need to use. Unfortunately, it takes a little bit of energy to figure out, hey, is this person worth, and what's their context? Where are they coming from? Is this really, how much does this matter, or should it matter to you?
Yeah. And that's, Brene Brown does a great job of quoting Teddy Roosevelt, which basically says, if you're in the arena, don't look to the people sitting in the stands to tell you what you should do or how you should do it. You should really only take your advice from other people that have been in the arena.
Yeah. And that's a great filter as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of Dr. Julie, I think I mentioned last week that these two chapters that were in the middle of last week and this week are my two favorites. The one on anxiety that we just did, and the one on stress. So I'm excited to get into section number 7, starting with chapter 27, and talk about stress. And I think I like the way that she starts with drawing a difference between, okay, what's the difference between stress and anxiety? Because there's a little bit of overlap in the way that we talk about them. And I made a note of the way that I look at them differently from each other. And I'd be curious to get your input on this. So for me, anxiety is the feeling or the thought of, what if the future's not going to be okay? Where stress is, what if I can't handle this situation?
Yeah. So a little bit more of a long-term, short-term type of.
Yeah. And kind of a general versus an acute as well. Like with anxiety is more general of what if whatever's happening to me today leads to a future that is not okay for me. Where stress is, okay, I'm in the middle of the situation. What if I don't have what it takes to deal with it?
Yeah, I think it's very accurate.
And one of the things that I find to be, she talks about the stress you feel before like an athletic competition, and how that's a good thing. And we generally, we look at that as a good thing. Now, if you're in the middle of Squid Game, not so much, because you're the consequences are, out of line, way too high. There's no way that you're prepared for it because you don't know what it is. But, if you're a gymnast or a soccer player and you're looking forward to a game or a tournament and you're ready for it, then that stress is part of what makes you good at what you do. Right.
Yeah. And, just as you're talking about that, I think for me, I'm looking at as anxiety almost makes me not want to do anything. That it's just, it's almost like a paralyzing type of I don't know what to do kind of thing. I just want to get away from it. Where stress, that releases the hormones, your fight or flight hormones, and you want to do something, and whether it's, you're still physically, you're either moving away from it or you're moving towards it. The flight is, but you're still doing some sort of physical action. You got to burn off that extra energy that gets generated when you're feeling stressed.
Yeah. And one of the things that I remember learning in 9th grade life management, that was a class we had to take here in Florida. one of the things we learned about was the difference between eustress and distress. Eustress being, I think, EUSTRESS.
Yep.
And distress. And the difference for me between which of those I'm going to feel is how prepared I am for the situation. If I'm prepared for it, I've told you before, part of what I do for work is, I do a presentation every year for one of my clients where I manage it's a fraternal organization. Every year they get together once to vote on, new rules and regulations and to elect corporate officers and stuff. And it basically involves me being in the front of a room of 12 to 1,300 men and walking them through the process of how to use their little electronic voting fobs so that we can vote on these important matters. And the first year that I did it, I was a bit of a nervous wreck to stand up there, and I wasn't sure that it was going to work. I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to go. And back in May, I just did it for the 5th year. And now I'm excited to be up there and speak in front of a group of 1,200 guys, but I am not distressed over it. I'm ready to go. I look forward to it. It's an exciting time for me, and I enjoy it because I'm ready to go. I know what I'm going to say. I've tested out all the things that they're going to sit in their chair and do. I've tested literally every single one of those 1,200 voting fobs. I know that they all work before I've given them to the committee that hands them out. And so it's an exhilarating experience for me because I'm ready for it. Where if I got dropped into the middle of any other situation where it's like, hey, our featured speaker is late, we needed you to just get up there for 5 minutes and stall, I would be a nervous wreck. My leg would be shaking, my palms would be sweaty, all those bodily responses would be kicking in because I'm not ready for it. And I think that is the real difference between, whether you feel distress or eustress is this a situation you feel like you're prepared to deal with?
Yeah. I mean, I believe, and she actually mentions Huberman in one of these chapters too.
Does. Yeah, I thought I saw that.
Yeah, so the Huberman Lab, and he talks about, one of the things that he talked about was a similar example is if you're prepared, like, so going skydiving, if you're prepared to, to jump out of a plane, that feeling is a lot different than if you're just pushed out of a plane.
Certainly.
Right? But it's the same exact experience, but it's all about your mindset going into it, And one of them, again, that eustress is a good thing. It's something that, our bodies crave and I believe get healthier from, actually, that challenge.
Yeah, I think that, and she gets into it in another chapter where it's like, if you're trying to have a stress-free life, you're going to miss out on a lot of growth opportunities and a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
And so, I've got one more thing I want to say on this chapter, and then we'll get into the chapter on reducing stress, which is a very 90s thing to say, isn't it? I mean, I remember being in doctor's appointments with my parents where, the cardiologist would say, like, well, one of, in addition to diet and exercise, one of the things you need to do is reduce stress. And that didn't sound wrong to me at the time, but now I'm thinking it's like, okay, well, I only have stress because either something exciting / bad is happening, or I'm dealing with something that I care about the outcome. So which stresses would you like me to reduce? But the one thing I wanted to say was, I think sometimes we have a tendency to talk about it, and until you and I started talking about it, I talked about cortisol in a very one-dimensional way, where cortisol is the enemy. What we have to do is
I did too before eliminate Huberman. I did too. Absolutely.
We can't let cortisol affect us because cortisol is bad and it makes us unhealthy and blah blah blah. It's like, no, they're just like adrenaline, just like dopamine. There are good uses of these hormones and there are bad uses, and what we don't want to do with really any of them is live in a constant state of our brain only dumping too much of one thing, because that's what leads to problems. Yeah.
So what was interesting was she had a little line in there where she basically said one of the things that cortisol does is it releases sugar into your bloodstream to actually for your muscles and your brain to use when it's preparing for for that stressful event. And one of the issues I believe we have in this country is the fact that, well, besides we're all eating way too much carbohydrates, first of all, and sugars, but we have a lot of it stored as well. And so if it's one of the things that, that happens is when you have that much, when you basically have that cortisol release all the time, and then you're not using it, right? If we're just sitting around and we're not actually exercising, we're not relieving that stress, and we're just kind of wallowing in it, we're releasing all that sugar into our blood, and that causes a lot of damage. We're only supposed to have 2 teaspoons of sugar in our blood at any given time.
Oh, wow.
And so, and it's been shown that too much causes damage. It causes damage and they talk about it in diabetics, but it happens to everybody. It causes damage in all the little blood cells, right? And you've got those in your eyes and your kidneys and the ends of the nerves, your fingertips and your toes, and it causes all this damage. And they're also theorizing now that it causes damage in the brain, and they're calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes because of the too much sugar.
Yeah.
And so it's not just so the stress really does have there's a direct link to being physically unhealthy or causing disease.
Yeah. And I found it interesting that the short-term stress response that our body has is actually good for our immune system and good for our health.
Yes.
But when it's too long, and you live in that state for, prolonged periods of time, that's obviously when the damage happens. But again, stress is our relationship with the concept of stress is like our relationship with the concept of cortisol. It's like we only want to see the negative, where we forget that stress is what can refine our focus and refine our abilities and get the best performance out of us.
Yeah, well, I think it was in this chapter where she talked about how people who work really hard and are just like, grinding away long hours, and the cortisol is constantly being released, and stress and anxiety is constantly there, and they're not really physically doing anything to relieve it. They may just be working long hours, and then they haven't taken a vacation for a while. And so they take that vacation, the stress response stops, the cortisol goes down, and now your immune system gets weakened because of that, and they get sick the first couple of days on vacation. And I've heard of so many people, it's happened to me as well.
Yeah.
But I've heard of so many people where that's the case. It's just like, they're fine all year. They go on vacation and they come back with a story like, yeah, I got sick as soon as I went on vacation. And so there's something there, man. That's nuts. Yeah.
It's interesting. I just connected what she says about replenishing after your stressful periods.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to exercise, building muscle, getting in shape for a marathon, getting ready to have your picture taken, the choosing not to do some things is just as important as the things that you're choosing to do, meaning active recovery, choosing to drink more water, get more sleep. It feels like, oh, I'm just doing nothing. I'm just, I'm indulging my body in the things that it would be nice if I could, take the time to drink more water. It would be nice if I could get more sleep. It would be nice if I could fill in the blank. But making those choices to let your body recover is really as important as the things that you're choosing to do to stress your body, like devoting your time to that high pressure job you have, or going hard in the gym. It's like, doing nothing sometimes, or doing things that feel like nothing can be just as important as pushing yourself sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the trainers that I had followed, Ben Pekulski, for a while, he talked about, last time I talked a couple of years ago, he was talking about the importance of the sympathetic nervous system versus the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is what is the recovery part. It is the relaxing. That is your normal breathing, and the sympathetic is when you're all amped up. And so he would constantly talk about how it's super important to take supplements and sleep and rest and do all those things for that parasympathetic nervous system in order to recover, so that you can perform properly. And that also means, your nervous system also is very important, as when you're lifting, especially really heavy weights. Everything needs to be firing properly. You need to be aware, a lot of body awareness. Everything is really tied together. And so it's super important that is rested. Otherwise, things are off. You could shake, you could throw out your back, for example, so not that you know anything about that.
I was thinking I did some I think I've had about I think of things now in time periods in terms of how many podcasts we've recorded. I think I'm 3 podcasts into back pain, and it's mostly gone now. Okay. But I went back and did a forensic analysis of what I believe caused it, and I'm pretty sure that it was my deadlift form. I watched some videos from Mark Ripito to refresh myself, because they say deadlifting it's one of the simplest exercises, because all you're doing is picking up a barbell off the ground and putting it back down.
But that form is difficult to get right.
Yes, and I think the problem was I was doing it with a rounded back, and so the thing you have to remember before every deadlift is lift your chest up so that your back goes from being like this to being like this.
Yeah. And then kind of like lean forward get in proper position first. And then, in terms of your chest up, and then move into the right form. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think, and because it was, a rhomboid strain or spasm that I was experiencing, that does fit with a curved upper back. So
totally lines up.
When I get back to deadlifting, which I'm planning to get back in the gym next week, and I'm gonna start back at 135 again, or go down to the one in Longwood where they have the 10-pound plates, and maybe even start a little bit lighter, and just train myself to not round that upper back. And I think that is that's what did me in. So for getting to maintain my proper form, and like you said, I mean, a lot of what you're training your body to do when you lift is training your nervous system to adapt to the stress of dealing with that heavy weight. It's not just your muscles, it's not just your bones, it's your nervous system as well.
Right. It's not just cardiovascular. I mean, it's not quite, if you're doing, heavy weight and stuff, it's not so much cardiovascular, but it's absolutely, there's so many systems that need to talk to each other and, adapt and need to, and, it's your joints, everything else too.
Yeah.
All of those things need to be able to handle what you're trying to push on it.
Oh, you did say something that made me want to jump back real quick to our discussion about our fasting or pseudo fasting before our picture day, which is what are the big supplements that you think would be important for us to take the next 6 or 7 days to sort of help us with our no carb, low fat diets that we're going to be doing?
Electrolytes absolutely are critical, because we're not going to be getting any of that. We don't get any minerals, or very few, from our water these days. And so magnesium, potassium, especially sodium, is really important. There are some electrolyte pills that I've gotten off of Amazon. You can also just take pink sea salt, but you need more than you think you do, believe it or not. And so LMNT is a good one as well. It's a little expensive, but there's some flavors to it if you don't want to just drink the straight water or swallow some pills. But that would be very important, especially if you're fasting. It's really critically important is to get those electrolytes in.
Yeah, I did on your recommendation when I was doing the and I will admit to we were going to talk about my no sugar, no grain diet. Blew that completely away when my back was hurting and I wasn't working out and I wasn't doing much of anything. I was eating whatever I felt like eating, and I just did not have any willpower to
I think it's common. I mean, I'm the same way. If I'm not exercising, then my diet is off. I wouldn't need to go so far if I were to keep a strict diet while I'm not exercising. But for whatever reason, I end up getting strict with both at the same time. And that's, I'd like to look into more of that, why that's such a common occurrence for people, why that is. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm certainly going to use the opportunity for. In fact, I'm starting to think maybe I won't make my return to lifting next week. Maybe until picture day, I'm going to just stick to my eating, keeping the diet clean, and getting my 10,000 steps a day in, and just relying on walking for my physical activity, because that's the one thing I can do a lot of walking without triggering that super hunger response, where as soon as I start lifting heavy, I mean, like, I could literally walk out of the gym and go to the Culver's down the road and just eat myself silly. It's like as soon as I put the bar down for the last time, I am starving. I'm absolutely famished. Where we're going for long walks just does not do that to me.
Yeah, you may want to look into getting some like a highly branched cyclic dextrin. That's basically it's an unflavored carbohydrate that gets absorbed very quickly. I know you don't like the taste of glucose tabs and stuff like that, but if you're doing heavy, just down the road in the middle of your workout, just kind of sip on that, on like a scoop of that. And maybe some, branched chain amino acids or essential amino acids with that. And also glutamine is a good supplement that will prevent hunger.
I've got the pills. I take those. Yeah.
Glutamine's good to prevent hunger as well. Okay. So it actually makes, that's something else to think about.
All right, I'm going to be sure to hit some of that while we're getting ready for picture day. I'm also going to, I know that the number on the scale isn't a big factor in how you look for pictures, but I'm gonna weigh myself today and see if eating clean for the next week does have any effect on on dropping some weight, as well as hopefully get my chubby cheeks down a little bit. Honestly, the back pain did lead to some weight loss because I wasn't doing hardly anything, and so I wasn't eating. What I did eat was whatever I felt like eating, but I wasn't eating that much quantity of food because my activity was so low, and I did end up wasting away a little bit while I was laying in bed. Feeling sorry for myself.
So I'm sure you had some bouts of stress. Did you follow any of the advice here she talked about for chapter 30 about how we can make stress work for you?
Yeah, I did try to. One of the things I do attempt to do is mindfulness meditation. That's been on my list for a long time, but also reframing stress when I'm just a simple acknowledgement in the moment of I'm experiencing stress right now. My body, my mind's racing, and my heart rate's gone up, and I'm in the middle of a stress response, and then just backing away, whether it's, because I'm having a difficult conversation with somebody or I'm under a work deadline, just whatever it is, just being able to take a second to say, okay, this is what I'm experiencing right now, and putting, a name on it, like from our feelings wheel that I shared a few weeks ago, and just saying, okay, the thing that I'm doing or experiencing right now, it has a name. I've felt this before. I've gone through this before where I've fallen into this feeling and then I got over it, and I'll get over this one too. I like mindful showering, the idea of that. I like the idea of mindful teeth brushing. And that's one of the things that, Sam Harris has said you can make any experience can be a mindful experience, even the experience of dealing with pain in your physical body. Yeah. You can make that the focus of your attention, and you can turn feeling pain into a mindful experience.
Yeah, one of the things that has helped me with mindful showering or mindful teeth brushing is sometimes, our brain is just wired to, we'll start doing something, and even if you're trying to pay attention to it, your mind can wander, start thinking of something else, and you got to kind of come back to, oh, right, yeah, that's right. I'm trying to feel each tooth that I'm brushing, things like that.
Right.
What's helped me is using my non-dominant hand for either holding the toothbrush or holding the shower scrubby while I'm washing myself.
Interesting. I like that.
And by doing that, like it doesn't come as natural. And so you have to kind of think about, all right, this is a little awkward. This is strange. Just, using a different hand, and actually stimulates different neural pathways in your brain. And I'm sure there's some studies somewhere. I can't cite any of them, but somebody smarter than me had said at some point that actually stimulates other neural pathways by using your non-dominant hand. It makes sense because that's not something you're used to doing, and actually can make you more creative for that day.
Oh, okay. I like
because
that.
Now you've already started to put some blood in some other areas of your brain and things that may not have normally been active. So coming up with different ideas, and maybe it's a placebo effect, but I feel like I have come up with some unique solutions to problems just by honestly using my non-dominant hand while I was brushing my teeth.
That's interesting. One of the things I occasionally do on my morning walk, or even in the summer in Florida, one of the things I like to do when I'm trying to get my 10,000 steps a day is go over to usually the Altamont Mall, because that's the closest mall to us that isn't half empty. they actually have most of their stores are still there, where the closest one to us in Sanford is getting to be a ghost town.
Yeah.
But one of the things I'll do is I'll go to the mall and I'll pick.
I love the tumbleweed store. It's
exactly. they're really business is booming. The one over in Oviedo used to be one of the nicest malls in Orlando, but it is just a ghost town now. And I used to joke with people when your mall has a karate dojo, a pet rescue, and a cake store, and a tattoo parlor, that it might be a good sign that the mall is on the way out.
Yeah.
The rent in those places, the rent in a mall is supposed to be too expensive for those businesses.
It's true.
But anyway, one of the things that I would do is when I go to a mall to get my steps in, I'll go in my chosen entrance, the Dillard's or whatever, and I'll always go in and I'll take a right, and I'll walk around the whole perimeter of the wall of the mall by taking right turns. But then sometimes when I want to, think about a problem or a situation, I'll go in and I'll turn left instead.
Oh,
and it's such a different experience. You're seeing all the exact same things,
but just
in a different order.
That little bit of a change. It's amazing.
And so it feels, it feels like, because sometimes I won't want to drive, an extra 20 miles to go to a different mall to have a slightly, a different a change of scenery.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just go the other direction instead. And it feels just different enough that it gives me a little bit of variety.
You know what? I didn't realize until you said that once in a while I will do that when I walk around the block. Sometimes I try to get outside as much as possible. And some days it's just crazy and I can't. But what I'll do is I'll walk around the block, a tiny little block here to get to my mailbox. When I go a different direction, I also feel that it sometimes breaks up whatever's kind of stuck, whatever I'm stuck on, it will break it up a little bit in my mind.
Yeah. I hope you and I are not the only people in the world that get something out of these crazy little patterns. I hope somebody else can too. But it's just looking for something to switch things up sometimes. Just even a little bit does make a difference.
Yeah.
There was something else I wanted to say. Oh, one of the things I do think you can do in your life to reduce stress that I wanted to mention is these expectations that we set for ourselves. And I know so many guys, typically it's not guys like you and me that are single. It's guys that are married and have kids and stuff. And they find themselves in this position where they have to work extra hard so that they can afford a bigger house, a nicer car, a more lavish, 2-week family vacation every year. And so they have to keep bumping up the level of their pleasure and their recreation. And then to keep up with that, they have to keep bumping up the level of how hard their work and how stressed they are and how many hours they're putting in so they get that next promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'll say after I did that at some level when I was married, but I got divorced in early 2017. And really since then, my life has been mostly simplifying that rat race situation and just trying to have a simpler life where thanks to watching and reading a lot of the stuff from the two guys in The Minimalists, I've got a simpler life that emphasizes experience over possessions. And that, that's certainly easy. It's easier to do when you're a single guy. I mean, to make a big change like that, it takes a lot. And if you got a house full of a wife and kids and people are counting on you and your monthly bills are at a certain level and your debt's at a certain level and all that you just can't, you feel like you can't do anything. Everybody can do something about that. But, part of the work-life balance, if you want to have more life and less work, it's going to be you have to have less obligations and less expectations. And that's the direction I went in. And I can't see ever going back. I've told people before, I don't know that I'll ever own a house again that is my primary residence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'll never own real estate again, but the idea of owning the place that I live. I mean, I own my camper. I paid cash for it, and it was cheap and it's great. I don't have a mortgage payment or it's not financed or anything. But the idea of owning the house that I live in, I just have been getting too much out of not being in that in that paradigm, and I don't think I'll ever go back to it. And it's made my life happier. It's made my life easier. It's not for everybody, but it's working for me. And I think there are a lot of guys and gals out there that it might work for, but they feel like they're just hemmed in and they can't make that choice because they have too many obligations. And you know, a lot of the obligations you think are mandatory, they're not really as mandatory as you feel like they are. There are changes you can make. It's just, you know, a period of adjustment. So, you know, again, if you constantly feel a level of stress because you have to keep achieving more and more and more to have status symbols and bigger, fancier things, that's one way you can look at reducing the stress in your life. Just tell yourself that you don't need to burden yourself with all those things. If that's the path you're on and you're cool with it, then God bless, keep it up. But if it's a source of stress and pain, then start looking at what you can do to eliminate those things.
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of people, and I again also did not, you know, do that, you know, did follow that path either. But I know a lot of us will look at those types of goals and those achievements as, once I get that, I'll be happy. Right. And that's the dangerous thing you need to think about, is that a lot of times, even if you do get excited because you hit that goal or whatever, it's very fleeting and it doesn't last. And then it's on to the next thing. And so that can be very stressful because it's, you know, that constant chasing, instead of trying to, you know, maybe slow down, take a break and, you know, kind of analyze, okay, look, you know, is there a way that I can still, you know, work hard and achieve goals, but do it in a way that is, you know, a little bit less stressful, and, you know, maybe incorporates a little bit more of a kind of like a work-life balance into it, you know. And she, you know, she talks about a couple of things that are really important to do to kind of help get out of that pattern of, if you feel like you're like literally in that rat race and you can't go anywhere. You know, one of the things is breathing. It's just, you know, when you're feeling that stress, is longer exhales rather versus inhales.
Yes, absolutely.
Immediately signal to your body to relax. And sometimes that is enough to then kind of break up you know, break that pattern, give yourself a little bit of room to think and maybe go, okay, look, is there a way that I can kind of find a way to step out of this, whether that's just taking maybe like a 3-day weekend, and maybe it's, you know, is it possible that you can just take a vacation by yourself, not even with the family, perhaps, right? And just to be able to have some space to think about what's going on. And that's, I think, really important, that I know I don't do enough of, is a day by myself to just, you know, sit and think about, you know, what I want to do, where I'm going, what I'm planning. And you know, she also talks about how important it is to spend time connecting with others. In terms of the social isolation puts unbelievable amount of stress on the mind and the body. And so it's very important to stay connected to other people. You know, and as human beings, we're social animals. So I see that as well.
Yeah, this whole section is so good, because so many people feel like the stress that they have in their life is just it's a constant external force that just can't be managed, can't be dealt with. It just is what it is. I have a stressful life, and all I can do is keep running in the little wheel in my cage. And if I stop running, everything's going to fall apart. And it's like, no, and that's really the message of this book. It's like, you can't control a lot of things in life, but the things that you can control, you really should invest some time in learning how to do that, whether that's your emotions, your feelings, your stress level, your anxiety. It's like, you're not going to have an emotion-free life. You're not going to have an anxiety-free life. You're not going to have a stress-free life. But how much of that you have to deal with and how negatively it impacts your life, you can have a great deal of control on that if you're willing to invest the time to learn about it and practice the strategies to deal with it. And yeah, I just, it's not hard for me to think of people, you know, that are in my life that I care about, that it feels like they are in a constant state of burnout, where they feel like they just have these obligations to their families and their jobs, where they're just stuck on that wheel and there's nothing they can do about it. And it's like, yeah, actually, there are things you can do about it. There's things you can do about your diet, your exercise, your the way you spend what free time you do have, the option to find a professional to talk to. It's like there are a lot of things you can do to get your life to be the best life it can be while still dealing with these very important, very critical things that cause you stress.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not doing all of those things, right? It's maybe like going through this book and picking one thing that resonates with you, that you think, you would do, you could do,
right.
And that you would do. And so one of the things that actually she's talking about when she quoted Huberman, I couldn't believe she used that, dropped his name in there in the last chapter. But it was basically one of the things that he talked about was that basically widening our physical environment by by walking outside, for example, and looking out at the hills or the road out in front of you. Just by doing that relaxes our brain and allows us to be less stressed, and that we are pre-wired to do that. Whereas when we want to do really intense focused work, we basically want to narrow our gaze. And it's not much different when you see the horse racing, right? When they have the blinders, right? They so that they only see kind of what's going in front of them. And it's the same thing. We're not that different. If you want to do detailed work, you can put on a hat and look down, but that's going to zap our energy. So even if it's just like a walk outside, it's amazing all the physical benefits that you get from that. And again, it just to try to just kind of get unclogging, that where you feel clogged in your brain.
One of the things that came to mind when she was talking about the what the sense of awe can do for you to reduce your stress. Mm-hmm. I follow a lot of accounts on Instagram where they're essentially travel influencers, where all they do is, travel around the United States or North America. A lot of them are couples and they travel in a van or a motorhome and they take all these pictures of all these beautiful places. And man, when I'm scrolling through my timeline on Instagram and I see these people that went to, Glacier National Park up in Montana, or they went to Yellowstone or Yosemite, and they just have these videos of waterfalls or mountains or stuff like that, it instantly relaxes me when I see that. And I usually like it. I like it, and I share it with my friends and who also have the same interests as me. And it helps out. Just like looking at cute cat videos on the internet will certainly help out your stress. Looking at pictures of people that are traveling and seeing these parts of the world that you've either been to and have good memories of, or places you'd like to go, man, it helps me out a lot when I'm in the middle of my stressful day. Absolutely.
That's a great shortcut. I love it.
All right, Dan, I think we're about out of time today. You have anything else about stress you want to share?
The only thing that else was interesting to me was the stat that she threw out that said, if you tell yourself that you are good at handling things
working under pressure. Yes.
It's like 33. You get a 33%. What was it? Improvement or what?
Yes.
Or
your ability. Yeah. Your performance increases by a whole third if you tell yourself and you believe, which is one of the things she mentions about affirmations again. And so it's so important to have good, concrete, positive affirmations. And if you tell yourself that I really do work best under pressure, that makes you work best under pressure.
It's that setting that intention. And I think she had said that it really transforms the same energy, which is a fight or flight, from it's less flight and running away, and it's more of a fight, meaning preparing for that challenge. And it's the same thing as be preparing to fly, do skydiving, jumping out of the plane versus being pushed out of the plane. So hey, I work best under pressure. You're going to do better, and I love that, how it shows how powerful how much control we have and how powerful our brains are in terms of determining what our experiences in the world.
Let's make that the big takeaway for today's episode, which is after you listen to this, think back to a time where you had some kind of a deadline or some kind of a competition, and whether you knocked it out of the park or you just got it done, even if you just did an adequate job that was better than you thought you were going to do. Think about that memory and spend a couple moments, sort of living in that place where the pressure was on and you did what was expected of you or better. And then next time you're feeling that pressure, think about the time that you got it done.
That's great. That's great.
All right, sir.
Yeah.
It's welcome back. It's nice. The 1 week break we had where we didn't record one was fun, but
it was
nice
refreshing.
It's nice getting back into the routine.
It is though.
And I will talk to you next week on section number 8.
Sounds good. Have a good one, man.
Dan. Bye.
Bye-bye.